Okay, have you had enough of watching someone stumble through a Sudoku puzzle? Because I have. Now I know it might not be the most exciting gameplay footage to watch, but Sudoku for the Game Wave is really pretty nice. While Sudoku is generally thought of as a single-player experience, this game actually features a couple of interesting multiplayer modes which I'll attempt to show you as well. But first, let's just see the traditional single-player mode, which the game calls Emperor. The goal of Sudoku is to place the numbers 1 through 9 on the board, keeping in mind that each number can only appear once on each row, each column, and in each of the 9 3x3 subgrids. So if you're used to playing Sudoku with pencil and paper, or maybe on Nintendo's Brain Age, how does it work here? It works really well. You move the green cursor around the board with the arrow keys. Pressing the select button will change the cursor back and forth between a circle and square shape. While the cursor is a square, you can add numbers temporarily as reminders to yourself using the GameWave Remote's keypad. When you think you know a number that will go in a box, you can switch back to the circle shape and enter it. By pressing the A button on the remote, you can check your work at any time. Any incorrect number will disappear, so you'll know you're wrong. To correct your mistake, simply move the cursor over the box, press 0, and it will erase your entry. Pressing the C button allows you to turn the time display on or off, and pressing menu brings up your options for a new game, to save the game you're currently playing, or to change the background ambient sound. This video is putting me to sleep. There's nothing as relaxing as a Sudoku puzzle. Okay, while I am actually giving myself a case of the yawns here, this is actually a really good version of Sudoku. I don't know if it will beat pencil or paper for a traditionalist Sudoku player, but for someone like me who doesn't play that much, I think it works really good. And I said before this is a single-player mode, but actually up to 5 other people can grab a remote and join in at any time, and help you finish the puzzle cooperatively. And I have to admit that I actually like all the ambient background sounds. You know, you can switch between a thunderstorm or a gentle rain or waves, and I got to admit I find it pretty relaxing. So, you know, you've got controls that work well and 5 different difficulty levels, and the ability for other people to jump in and work on the same puzzle with you, which would be really hard with pencil and paper. You know, I think this is pretty cool. Okay, that was a lot of time spent on talking about what is essentially classic Sudoku. So if anyone's still awake, I'll talk a little bit about the multiplayer modes. The first mode we'll talk about is called Shogun. Now, the most important thing here is to make sure you pick really, really stupid names for your players in the game. I apologize for the bad gameplay in these multiplayer modes. I'm trying to use 2 remotes myself and play both players. Nonetheless, the goal of Shogun is to score points by placing numbers correctly on the board, and place as many as you can before the time runs out on your turn. Before you start the game, you get to choose from 1 of 5 difficulty levels, and also the time length for the player's turns. And then the game will generate a solvable Sudoku board for you. And you play just like you did in the single-player mode, where you use the arrow keys and number pad to move around and place numbers you think are correct. Of course, you don't have the chance to put in temporary numbers. If you put in a wrong number, your turn ends right then. Scoring is based on how many empty squares are in the particular zone you place the number in. And by zone, I mean one of the 3x3 subgrids on the board. You get 1 point for each empty space in the zone. Each correct piece you place will increase the points multiplier, which is shown in the upper right triangle on the screen. And this will obviously multiply any future points you get, and for each additional correct piece you put in, it keeps going up and up. So the goal is to, as quickly as possible, find a correct number to fit in a zone with a lot of empty spaces. And I'm kind of playing it backwards, I think, here. I tend to be putting the numbers in zones that already have a lot of numbers here. Nonetheless, you can kind of see the basic idea of how the game works. I would imagine it would be a heck of a lot of fun with 2 people, certainly a lot more than 1 person. And actually, you can play with up to 6 people in this game. Once every square is filled in, the game is over. After the fireworks are over, you'll see a recap of the scoring. It has stats like power rating and skill level. It doesn't actually explain what these mean in the manual, so I don't know their significance, but nonetheless, here's a breakdown of something. I'm sure it's important to someone somewhere to know these numbers. Anyway, let's have a look at the final mode of Sudoku, called Ninja. Ninja is playable with 2 to 6 players. And of course, as always, the goal is to place your numbers somewhere on the Sudoku board in order to gain the most points. In Ninja, when you put down a number on the board, you're awarded 1 point for every other number that was in the same row, column, or subgrid as the one that you placed your number in. It's important, however, to put your numbers down as quickly as possible, because at the end of the match, when the final score is being tabulated, every player besides the fastest player gets a penalty assessed to their score, and the slower you are, the larger the penalty. Lastly, at the end of the game, you can get bonus points if you've put down more numbers in a 3x3 subgrid than any other player. When you start the game, you don't actually get to choose which number you get to place on the board. It's given to you. And once your turn is over, you're given a new number. But now, as the other players take their turns, you have the opportunity to change your number to whatever you want, up until the point that your turn starts. Once your turn begins, you are stuck with whatever you have. But having that opportunity to choose, gives you time to analyze the board, see what other players are doing, and maybe pick a new number that will get you more points. If you've been given or have chosen a number that can't legally be placed on the game board, your number will change into an X, which can be placed in any space, but will only get you a set amount of 10 points. As expected, a game of Ninja ends like any other, when the board is completely filled with numbers. At least this game I didn't finish in a tie with myself like I did on Shogun, but we still have to do the final tabulation of the score. And amazingly, I tie myself again. But at least here you can see the effect that speed and controlling the 3x3 zones has on the final score. But this video is way too long, so I want to try to squeeze in one of the soundscapes that are included on the disc as well. If you're really just interested in single-player Sudoku, there's probably not a compelling reason to get this game. If you have friends who are into Sudoku, and these multiplayer modes look interesting, this might be a game that you want to give a try.